There is a very modern way to misunderstand an archetype. You turn it into a costume. You find a beautiful word, mother, Amazon, muse, mystic. You put it on like a private mythology. And for a few days, it feels as if the chaos of your inner life has finally been organized. But the psyche does not usually give us names so we can decorate ourselves. It gives us names so we can see where we have become one-sided. That is the uncomfortable part of Toni Wolff. Most people who know her name know her through the shadow of Carl Jung, patient, collaborator, companion, rival to Emma Jung, the woman standing too close to the center of a brilliant and painful circle. That story is real enough to be treated carefully, but it is also a trap. Because if Toni Wolff becomes only a character in Jung's biography, then her most interesting psychological idea disappears behind gossip. Wolff proposed that the feminine psyche could be understood through 4 structural forms: the mother, the Hetaira, the Amazon, and the medial woman. At first, this sounds like exactly the kind of thing the internet would love to flatten. 4 types, 4 identities, 4 aesthetic rooms where a person can choose the one that makes them feel most powerful. But Wolff was not trying to build a personality quiz. She was trying to describe forms of relatedness. Different ways psychic energy turns toward people, culture, development, love, work, and the unconscious. And if we read her carefully, the question is not, which type am I? Toni Wolff was born in Zurich in 1888. She came from a cultivated family, read widely, and developed a serious interest in philosophy, religion, mythology, and the symbolic life. Her intellectual life had to find another route. In 1910, after the death of her father and a period of depression, she entered analysis with Carl Jung. Very quickly, Jung recognized her intelligence. She became part of the early analytic circle in Zurich, not merely as a patient, but as a mind Jung could think with. The Psychology Club Zurich later described her as Jung's long-term collaborator during the difficult years after his break with Freud. She served as president of the club from 1928 to 1945 and was made honorary president in 1952. So before we enter the 4 rooms, we should notice something. Wolff was not an outsider writing fan theory about Jung. She was inside the formation of analytical psychology. She watched the concepts being made. That does not mean we must accept every assumption in her model. It means we should not dismiss it as decorative. Her essay on the structural forms of the feminine psyche was written to help modern women understand themselves more consciously. The language belongs to its time. Some gender assumptions feel narrow now, and they should. But a historically limited map can still reveal something psychologically alive. Wolff's 4 forms are arranged like a cross. On one axis are the mother and the Hetaira. These are personally related forms. Their energy is directed toward particular people, toward the intimate and concrete life of relationship. On the other axis are the Amazon and the medial woman. These are impersonally related forms. Their energy is directed less toward one individual and more toward culture, objective values, collective life, or the unconscious atmosphere of an age. Already, the model becomes more interesting than 4 labels. It is asking how a person relates. Do I turn toward the person who needs protection, the individual soul of another, work and cultural value, or the invisible currents moving through the collective psyche? If this kind of careful Jungian map interests you, keep this channel close. The people around Jung often saw things the textbook version still leaves too simple. The first room is the mother. This word is easy to sentimentalize, so we have to slow down. Wolff's mother form is not simply a biological mother or a moral complement. It is an orientation toward what needs protection, nourishment, and development. The mother sees vulnerability. She notices the child, the patient, the student, the home, the fragile beginning that requires care before it can stand on its own. But every archetypal form has a shadow when it becomes the only form. The mother can begin to need the dependency she once served. Care can become control. Protection can become possession. The person being helped can quietly become the stage on which the mother's unlived life is performed. This is why Wolff's model is not a celebration of types, it is a warning about one-sidedness. The mother becomes dangerous when development is no longer the goal. The child, partner, student, or patient is not allowed to become separate because separation would leave the mother without a role. The second room is the Hetaira. The word comes from ancient Greek, and in Wolff's use, it points toward the companion, the beloved, the friend, the awakener of another person's individuality. Where the mother is oriented toward growth and protection, the Hetaira is oriented toward the inner life of the other person. She asks what desire, vocation, wound, dream, or private truth has not yet been recognized. But here too, the shadow arrives when the form becomes absolute. The Hetaira can make inwardness more important than reality. She can tempt another person away from responsibility in the name of authenticity. She can become attached to being the one who understands the hidden soul of another, even when that understanding leads nowhere concrete. The danger is not intimacy. The danger is using intimacy to dissolve boundaries, obligations, and ordinary life. In modern language, the Hetaira at her worst can romanticize potential. She can become loyal to the beautiful, unfinished version of someone while ignoring what their choices are actually doing. The mother protects development. The Hetaira awakens individuality. But both are personally related. Both are drawn toward the specific face, the specific bond, the specific soul in front of them. Then the cross turns. The third room is the Amazon. This form is not merely the warrior woman of popular imagination. In Wolff's structure, the Amazon is oriented toward objective cultural values: work, achievement, skill, independence, discipline, and a place in the world beyond private relationship. The Amazon does not ask first, "Who needs me?" She asks, "What must be done?" For women whose lives had been narrowed to domestic roles, the Amazon named psychic energy that wanted the world, not only the household. But the shadow of the Amazon is not hard to recognize. She can become contemptuous of dependency, tenderness, and personal need. She can identify so strongly with competence that vulnerability feels like humiliation. She can reduce life to function, status, production, and victory. If the mother can trap others in care, and the Hetaira can trap others in intimacy, the Amazon can trap herself in performance. She may become impressive and strangely unreachable. The fourth room is the medial woman. This is the strangest form in Wolff's map, and perhaps the easiest to misuse today. The medial woman is oriented toward the collective unconscious, toward the psychic atmosphere of a time, toward images, symbols, religious experience, art, healing, and the strange currents beneath ordinary consciousness. In a mature form, the medial type can give language to what others only feel as atmosphere. She can sense a symbolic pattern before it becomes a public idea. But Wolff is not describing a glamorous mystic identity. The medial form has a serious danger. Without enough ego strength, the person can be overwhelmed by the very material they receive. They may not be able to tell what belongs to them and what belongs to the collective field. They may confuse depth with authority, intensity with truth, and psychic openness with wisdom. This is one reason Jungians are so suspicious of inflation. To touch the collective unconscious is not the same as understanding it. To receive an image is not the same as knowing what it means. Now the model can be seen as a whole. Mother and Hetaira belong to the personal axis. Amazon and Medial belong to the impersonal axis. Mother and Amazon tend toward development and objective function. Hetaira and Medial tend toward inwardness and invisible pattern. But the point is not to rank them. The point is that each form sees something the others can miss. The mother sees the vulnerable beginning. The Hetaira sees the hidden individual, the Amazon sees the objective task, the Medial sees the collective image. A person trapped in one room begins to misread the other rooms. The mother may see Amazon independence as coldness. The Amazon may see mother care as dependency. The Hetaira may see Amazon discipline as soulless. The Medial may see ordinary responsibility as spiritual dullness. This is where the model becomes useful, not because it tells you what you are, but because it shows what you are tempted to dismiss. The caring person who cannot stop managing other people. The intimate person who thinks every boundary is a betrayal. The competent person who treats tenderness as failure. The intuitive person who treats every feeling as revelation. This is the midpoint of Wolff's map. A type is not just a gift. It is also a hiding place. If you want the Jungian lineage beyond slogans, stay with this channel. The important part is not choosing an archetype. It is noticing what your favorite archetype protects you from. Now we have to make the modern correction. Wolff called these forms feminine. She was writing for women, and she was trying to name possibilities that her culture often restricted. That historical fact matters. But if we simply repeat the model as a fixed map of womanhood, we turn a psychological tool into a cage. A contemporary reader has to be more careful. Men can be possessed by mother energy. Men can live as Hetaira, Amazon, or Medial types. Women can live any of these forms without being reduced to them. The model can be used without accepting old boundaries around sex, role, and destiny. The deeper question is not which form belongs to which gender. The deeper question is, what kind of relatedness is active here? When someone protects a vulnerable person, builds an institution of care, or refuses to let a growing thing be neglected, the mother form is present. When someone sees the private soul of another or awakens a hidden vocation, the Hetaira form is present. When someone claims skill, public value, independence, discipline, or a task beyond personal approval, the Amazon form is present. When someone translates dream, art, religious image, cultural atmosphere, or unconscious material into language, the Medial form is present. These forms are not identities. They are movements of psychic energy. That distinction changes everything. An identity asks to be defended. A psychic movement asks to be observed. If I say, I am the Amazon, then any need for care may feel like an attack on who I am. If I say, Amazon energy is strong in me right now, then I can still ask whether mother, Hetaira, or Medial life has been neglected. If I say, I am Medial, I may confuse sensitivity with destiny. If I say, the Medial function is active, I can ask whether I have enough structure to carry what I sense. This is why Jungian psychology is usually at its best when it resists branding. The psyche is not trying to produce a more interesting self-description. It is trying to restore movement where life has become rigid. Toni Wolff's own life makes the question sharper. She was not only a companion in Jung's life, she was also a worker, teacher, analyst, organizer, editor, president, and theoretical mind. She stood in relation to Jung, but also to a wider cultural task. In other words, even her biography refuses a single room. It is tempting to make her only Hetaira, the companion of Jung's inner life, but that would be too simple. The Amazon is there in her public work. The Medial is there in her symbolic sensitivity. The mother is there in her care for the analytic community. So how should a viewer use Wolff's 4 forms? Not by asking, which label makes me feel seen? Ask instead, where do I become one-sided? Which form do I secretly despise? Where do I call something depth because I do not want to test it against reality? Where do I call something love because I am afraid of separation? Where do I call something independence because I am afraid of needing anyone? These questions are less flattering than archetype branding. They are also more useful. Wolff's model is not perfect. It carries the limits of its period. It can be misused in exactly the ways Jungian language is often misused, to make old roles sound sacred or to excuse one-sidedness with a beautiful name. But read with care, it still does something valuable. It reminds us that the psyche is plural. There is not one correct way to be developed. There is care, there is intimacy, there is work, there is symbolic receptivity, there is the personal bond, and there is the impersonal task. There is the vulnerable thing that needs protection, and there is the door that has to be opened even when protection would be easier. The mature psyche does not live permanently in one room. It learns the house. At the end, imagine a quiet lecture room in Zurich. On the board is a simple cross. Mother and Hetaira on one axis, Amazon and Medial on the other. 4 doors, 4 ways of turning toward life. The immature question is, which door is mine? The better question is, which door have I locked? And the most difficult question is, which room have I mistaken for the whole house?